from the older siblings point of view, you never care about your younger siblings.
How's everyone doing?
From the younger ones, they look up to the.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, everybody knows Kathleen and Heather.
Hi there.
And
I worked with you for a while.
Here I am.
we had an opportunity at the January 12th study session after the board meeting to do a pretty deep dive into what's going on with the middle school grade reconfiguration task force and all the various elements they're looking at as we plan for the transition to middle school. So we wanted to, there's less action at the elementary and high school, but still action going on. And so thought it would be an appropriate time to bring the board up to speed on the workings of those two task forces.
We didn't make copies.
We didn't make copies, but we will, right? So just listen carefully and then you'll have the paper to follow up, okay? We're kind of going 100 miles an hour right now, so this is fresh off the press. Okay, so elementary's first. You see a lot of this in our updates when we send you the work of the task forces, so some of this will be a little redundant.
Heather, can you?
I can, absolutely.
Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. I'm sure.
So some of it's going to be a little redundant, but I just thought I'd go over it, and then if you've got questions, of course you can ask. So one of the big jobs of the task force was to develop the mission statement, which we did last year, and then start working on what are the transitions going to be like, because we know we're not only sending 5th and 6th graders off, and middle school's going to have a plan for that, but there are kids that are going to transition from other elementary schools into other elementary schools, so we need to make sure we've got a plan in place for that. Some of the ways we're doing that, in no particular order, is we're going to standardize placement cards across the district so that teachers get the same information whether or not they're in the same school. What's typically being done in elementary schools is they develop their own placement card with the information they want for the next year's teacher to know about their student. And they've got a lot of the same things, but they're sort of unique to the building, and we thought that won't work when we're trying to share kids across schools. So there's a little subgroup of principals working on that. There's another group working on the welcoming activities. Those will occur not only in the spring of next year, so families can come over, see the school, meet the principals, see the teachers, but then when the school year starts up again in August, so come do some play dates, meet with the principal in the park, that kind of thing, so they feel like they're totally immersed into the school community, the new school community. Intramurals and activities, we've made some decisions on. Intramurals at elementary, as you may remember, are really just two: cross country in the fall and track and field in the spring. And those will stay. There's no reason to upset that apple cart at all. Activities vary by building, and some PTAs have.
Are you adding intramurals, or is it just going to remain?
Just those two.
We love
Fall and spring, yeah. Activities, though, vary a lot. Some PTAs get really activated around activities for Wednesday afternoon, or classes kids can take on, I don't know, ceramics or art or those kinds of things. Others have activities that are more related to remedial programs that they do after school, or extended day activities. Those are unique to the buildings. And we thought, rather than trying to standardize those across the system, the school should have the option to continue with the activities that they want. And the new members of the community can certainly have input into that through PTA channels and that kind of thing. So there'll be some variance there. And that won't hurt kids, because they'll just get different activities if they go to a different school. Full day K for everybody in 2017 is going to take a fair amount of planning and getting everybody's needs met in terms of the training teachers have to engage in and all that. So that's an area we're working on and coordinating with what we know about WA kids and all that. And then curriculum will pretty much be the same. I mean, elementary school at first grade is still going to be the same curriculum across the district as it will in any school, right? And I think our communities sort of come to depend on that. So.
Before you go on, so the WA kids, how much time and whose time does that take to conduct those assessments?
It's the teacher's time.
Teachers, okay.
And it's extensive. They have to observe over the course of 2 months, and there's a 2-page assessment that they have to comment in many boxes for each child. And it ranges from everything for academic readiness, social readiness, psychomotor readiness, all of that. It's very extensive. And it's based on observation. There's not something you sit down and do with the kid, but based on your professional judgment and what you see in class, then you rate the kids. And it has to be done by the end of October. Of the,
First year,
well, yeah, the kindergarten year, so.
and that's in addition to individualized meeting, teacher with kid and family.
Yes, there's another requirement of it that all teachers meet with each and every family before the end of September. And preferably with home visits. That's what the legislation would prefer. In some instances, that's not entirely appropriate or possible, but there is a requirement that they will meet with all kids' families before the end of September and have a conference.
That sounds like an enormous workload
Yeah, it
for
is.
the kindergarten teachers in the first 2 months.
So this year with Kenmore and with Wooden, the regulations allow you to use 3 school days, that still count the hours towards instructional hours to conduct those home visits or those initial meetings. And so the students in full-day kindergarten at Kenmore and Wooden didn't start until the 4th day of the school year, and the first 3 days teachers were doing those parent-family meetings. And we suspect that that's what we'll continue to do next year as well.
Right, as long as we're provided with that time and we can count it against the basic hours, we'd want to give the teachers that kind of relief, so.
Thank you.
My question is, do we have any schools like Crystal Springs or where we have low income, diverse families? Do we have daycare at any of those schools as an after-school activity per se?
No.
Okay, so I just want to make sure if someone had it at one school and then we didn't have it at another and they were moving. But I wasn't sure if we actually,
In those
had
circumstances, we're really getting so down to the wire with number of classrooms we need that.
well, I meant after school. Do we provide like after, because number of classrooms don't really matter after school,
It
right?
does if class teachers are utilizing those rooms.
Right, so to have daycare in someone's classroom right after school means we cut into their planning time and all
Oh, I
that,
see.
so
I
that's
see.
not usually done.
Okay.
It's usually an empty room or a PTA room or,
The
the gym, that kind of thing. So when we can accommodate it, we do. I'm just warning you that given the space consideration, Crystal Springs being a place, there isn't any place.
Yeah, that's fine, I just want to make sure someone wasn't relying on it and then they move to schools and they don't have it.
Right.
That-
Right,
Especially-
not everybody does have it. Okay, okay. So band and orchestra has been a big discussion, of course, because we have elementary students start strings in 4th grade and have 3 years of before school. Band in 5th grade, if they so choose, in 5th and 6th grade for a band instrument. That's been predicated on a couple assumptions. One is that junior highs start before elementary. Second is that we've got busing and transportation and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of issues around it, and we've got a smaller subgroup led by Ted Christensen, who's the music supervisor, as well as the music teachers themselves, giving us recommendations about how we might modify this program or make a recommendation. So when we make the transition, do we strictly stay with it the way it is, or do we adapt it in some way and perhaps start it at middle school for all 6th graders? They could then, the trade-off is kids get those opportunities 2 days a week before school. It's about a half an hour. It's supposed to be 45 minutes, but by the time you get them there, instruments out, instruction, etc., get them on the bus and get them to school where they're often late because of traffic and that kind of thing, 2 days a week. The alternative would be, well, we don't begin until 6th grade, but they have it 4 or 5 days a week and with a music instructor that's there. So music department is grappling with all that to see if this is a chance for us to make it kind of a different change for that program without sacrificing any of the quality of the music program. And they're busy working with that. And of course the start time committee, we're doing this sort of hand in hand. They need a recommendation from us. We need to know what you're thinking about start times. I mean, it's all kind of wrapped up in that whole thing. So
So, and I know we'll get to this conversation a little bit later when we meet with the Start Time Task Force, but I think if you do a close reading of the resolution the board adopted, elementary band and orchestra would be subservient to the larger objectives of a start time of 8 o'clock or later in 2017-18. So I think it's one of the things the task force is
Or
struggling with a little bit.
We've really pulled that aside, away from the work because we know that the elementary grade reconfiguring is working on it. And the start time task force just needs to know what's going to be happening.
I think it's great that you involve Ted in it,
Yes.
and the music teacher.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, because he's got voice and
Sure.
that, I
Yes,
think
he-
that
yes, he
helps
does.
all of us
Mhm.
in a good way, because he's a great.
Well,
It's
and
a
I
very
think-
important program, so.
Right, and what, we've said is the music department and the program in this district is a crown jewel in our district, and we have no desire at all to impact that negatively. If the music teachers are behind the recommendation,
Yes.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
fine with parents, right? By and large, parents are gonna say, well, okay, if they think they can do it this way, then we'll go along with it. If they're not, it's not gonna go well, so it seemed important to do that.
I just, yeah, really, so if I remember correctly, the start time recommendation is November? Is that when the final decision, or is it gonna be sooner?
We're next year. So we're hoping, and you'll see that to come at
Figure out where-
4:45, to have a recommendation for a study session in November, and then it would come to, a vote, first and second reading in January
Okay.
2017.
And is that enough time for?
Yeah, so
trying
we're
to
gonna-
uncouple.
Right.
I just really want to say
Oh,
we're
okay.
uncoupling,
Right.
uncoupling. I said, we're not the curriculum folks.
Right.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
the start time is really about getting the right start time, so that then what we need is the start time, so then we can figure out, well,
How can we make this work?
Okay.
this
So
schedule,
this
for example.
recommendation is going to come by spring break from the music teachers. They're actively
Oh,
working on
okay.
that
Yeah.
now. Okay?
So Kathleen, I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, so for sixth grade, is the thought if those band students would be taking a class in band,
Yes,
not
In middle
school.
in middle school, middle school.
They'll be in middle school, it'll be
Yeah.
an elective.
So
Every day,
that-
band, orchestra, choir, all three.
Right,
Oh, so then we wouldn't have any busing.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, so as Kathleen said, the trade-off is more regular, longer periods of instruction versus getting it a grade or two earlier.
And no tuition,
Yeah.
Yeah,
one
no
grade
tuition.
is
Part of the school day as opposed to.
And you make the
outside
choice.
school.
No transportation, all that.
Yeah.
Okay?
okay.
And then Camp Cedar Springs is also something to be considered. That's our outdoor education program, which is morphed from Camp Casey days and to Camp Cedar Springs. Kids go in the early spring now because they used to go in the late spring, but now we have SBA testing, so they can't, so they go in March. It's not ideal. Sometimes they have to buy garbage bags because the kids don't come prepared with coats, and it snows in March. So it isn't exactly a spring experience, but
It's one night, correct?
two.
Oh, it is
Two nights. It's Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday.
Wonderful. Have you ever chaperoned?
I went to Camp Casey as a
Oh,
kid.
chaperoning
We
is
went
even
to
more
West
fun.
Hill Elementary.
So Tim Rhodes is on our task force, and Clark Combs is the supervisor of that, the camp experience. And they have got a small group together to talk about whether that should stay the same now that fifth grade will be the oldest grade in the building. Does it make some sense to have that in the fall and loop in leadership ideas, much the way we do with link days and that kind of thing, to get kids kind of, wow, we're the oldest kids in school, we've got some responsibility, or should we keep it in the spring, midwinter, and just make it a strictly outdoor ed? The purpose of the camp is to give kids an experience in sleeping bags out in the woods and all that kind of thing. So that group is grappling with that right now, and will also be coming back and making a recommendation.
So will you be getting to, later in your presentation, how the fifth graders for next year are going to get their leadership? Are you going to get to this later?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Don't jump ahead. Jump ahead.
Okay, now we're at communication. We've developed a survey with Leanna's help that we're sending out to gather some input on all these things. From parents, it ranges from questions as simple as, do you know where your child will be going to school in 2017? Because we think that's a fair question, right? If you don't, we might want to help you with that. And then others down the way of what kind of transition things are you concerned about? What do you need to hear from us? What kind of input do you have on the music? What kind of input on camp, et cetera, so that we get some information back from families that can inform the work of the group. So work we have left to do, and this I'm going to get to you, Kim, honestly. We need to standardize the transition plan and communicate to all buildings. So part of that transition is the experience fifth graders are going to have next year while they're in the last year of their elementary school, but sixth graders are still there, right? So that
That's
double,
my check.
right, yes. So what we learned from the PTA folks from Lake Washington, as well as some of our other work with surrounding districts, is you need to offer separate but equal experiences. So it doesn't go well if you just loop all fifth and sixth graders together and say, guess what, this year you're all the oldest kids. Because the sixth graders feel cheated. Like, hey, I've been waiting a long time to sit in those chairs at the assembly, and now these fifth graders get to horn in on it. That isn't fair, right? And fifth graders get cheated out of the experience of being that last class. So there are going to be needing to be dual experiences. If you do this for one, then you have to come up with some other experience that's equal for others. So, you know, you may remember this from your own children, but sitting in chairs in an assembly at an elementary school is a big old hulking deal, because most kids don't get to do it. So only special kids get to, and that's usually the sixth graders. So maybe they get to do that the first half of the year, and the fifth graders get to join them the second half of the year. Maybe we trade that around so fifth graders only get that at the end. We're going to have to brainstorm some of that around how do we make it separate but equal. If you have a little commencement or a graduation ceremony or a rite of passage kind of thing, you need to have one for the fifth graders and a different one for the sixth graders, because we want those groups to be honored in the same way. And there's a team of principals working on exactly that. We also don't want one school to do a bang-up job with that and another school not to have thought about it and have parents comparing, well, at my school, blah, 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 because that won't go well for everybody. So for next year, we're going to have to standardize some of those experiences across the district so that everybody gets that access.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, because as minutia as it sounds, right? I think I can remember being the oldest of a class, and you know,
Well, it's important.
I remember being a little kindergartner at West Hill and sixth graders teasing me that you baby, you kindergarten baby member. And so like for that fifth grade class, they're not only not going to be the oldest when they come in to the middle school,
They're
they
going to
now
be
have to
youngest.
be the youngest
Sure.
again. And the sixth graders never
Kind of
have to be
escape
the
that little-
escape that little thing.
Right, so we
I
are
think it's
working
important,
hard,
yeah.
right, absolutely, and you know, the elementary principals will be the first to tell you how important those
Yeah.
things are. So we want to make sure kids are getting good experiences in both places across the district. So standardizing those welcome plans, those school visits, if we send kids over to another school, if we've got PTA welcoming activities, PTAs are coordinating, we're working with our PTA presidents to say, get with the school you're sending kids to or receiving kids from next year, so you can coordinate some of those activities and welcoming, so families are really feeling embraced by, oh wow, we get to go to this other school. Jonathan Aldenese and May Pelto are sort of the poster childs for that right now. They've been working together for the last year to make those families that are coming from Crystal Springs into Frank Love feel welcome, invited, understood, valued. And they've had joint meetings, they've visited some of the neighborhoods, all of that already, so they're laying that
So
foundation.
can I tell you on something to that? I was, again, I'm not trying to plug to myself, but I was here during the split between Bothell and Woodville, and I think it's really important to remember the kids who are getting left at a school
Mhm.
and their friends are going to.
Mhm.
Because I remember that being a really painful experience for a lot of us. You know, when our friends left, the ones that were left behind, we didn't get the new school, the new experience, and there is some emotional things that go on with that too.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I'll keep that in mind. So obviously we need to make a recommendation on band and strings and the recommendation on camp. And we need to coordinate the staff changes with HR. Elementary is going to have about 60 teachers leaving elementary school, going to middle. So if you think 20 elementary schools, 3 per building, which isn't how it works, but 60 approximately will need to move to middle school. Jeff has a survey out right now about who might be interested in that, very generically, and I think there's 50 some that said they were interested in moving to middle school, which we were very heartened to hear, because obviously we don't want to do that involuntarily unless we have to. But we need to continue to work with those teachers so they understand what middle school is, what they're signing up for, what kind of credentials they have to teach a specific content area rather than general. So we're working in tandem with HR around that.
We did that certification analysis for most teachers last year, and communicated that to them. And then actually we'll probably get a little bit of the reauthorization of the No Child Left Behind as now Every Student Succeeds Act will help us a little bit because the feds have gotten rid of their federal highly qualified teacher requirements that were a bit of a barrier. So unless the state of Washington, the Professional Ed Standards Board does something crazy like reinstitutes the federal highly qualified requirements in our own state regulations, we won't have, we'll eliminate a lot of the complications that have existed around this highly qualified teacher federal requirement.
And add more flexibility.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, in terms of how many new kindergarten teachers, net new, not the term will we have for next year and for the following year? For the next 2 years, do you have an estimate of that?
I think Jeff is estimating we'll need 40 new teachers. That's a number in my head. Not positive about that because we're not instituting it everywhere.
Yeah. For next year, I think it's a relatively low number because we're really not adding that
Right,
many
that's what I thought.
total full-day kindergarten sections. I think the following year it will be, I think the split this year is like 42 full-day programs and then 19
Yes,
half-day,
half-day that are full.
which equivalent to 38 half-day programs. And so presuming next year all of those half-days will go to full-day, we'll need about 20 more kindergarten teachers, 17, 18.
And then, but for this
Plus
next,
enrollment.
but for the upcoming year, it's.
Minimum.
It's much smaller
It's
than
much
that. I would say it's
smaller.
probably
Single
fewer than
digits,
10.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The bigger problem there is going to be that we're going to assign people that are currently been teaching full-day K to half-day K.
Oh, so.
And they're not going to like that because it's double the number of kids, double the number of conferences, double the number of report cards, double the number of assessments. I mean, that's not going to make them happy, but we're hopeful that the majority will be absorbed into maybe they teach grade 1 next year or grade 2, and we hire brand new baby teachers who need a job.
We're also not.
And they won't know the difference.
We're also not presuming that we're going to get a flood of people who are going to be anxious to go to the North Shore Primary Center, so it's
That's
likely
true.
that most of the kindergarten teachers who will end up there next year will be new hires, although we hope and would benefit by having at least 1 or 2 experienced kindergarten
people,
teachers as
right.
a part of that mix.
Right.
Champions.
Yeah, okay?
Question on the survey really quick. This kind of is broad for all the surveys that are being created by the district. There's not a place to check if you have more than one child so like for the elementary level, you need to have check all that apply, but it only is allowing you to do it for one student on these surveys right now.
On the start time
We
task
talked about
force.
that.
And there was another something that came out, it might have been the diversity or
We
something.
said choose your
Choose
level
your
so that
level.
we could have a sense, choose the one. But we did talk about that yesterday with Leanna as we were talking. She's working with the Nelson group to craft our survey. The pros and cons of
There's
having.
pros and cons of each way she
Right.
talked about, yeah.
Right.
And just having it so that you can only link to the survey once.
Well, what
That's
that,
intentional.
that's
Yes.
intentional, so what that prevents
No,
is,
yes, that you do,
Right.
because with, I
So
think
you load
with the
enough.
later start time, you could respond more than once, because it was on Survey Monkey.
Hmm.
From a different device, you could.
so we should probably talk to
Well,
Leanna about that.
it-
Well,
It's device specific because it records the IP address. of the
Right, so you could go to a
devices.
different device, and if you have 2 or 3 kids, then, you know,
Use
but,
your 2 or 3 devices.
But you can also
Yeah.
respond, on the survey that we created with Leanna though, you can respond to all the questions. So I think we talked about, you just check one, so you choose with your elementary, middle school, or high school. but you can respond to all the questions.
Yeah, it doesn't
It's
take
not
you
gonna
to a
take you-
different survey
Right.
that only lets you answer concerns about elementary. You're gonna answer everything. And
Correct.
so we thought, well, okay,
Information's more important than what level of parent.
Parent
and where
you are, right.
where your kid is at.
but
I've just heard that a lot, that people want to be able to answer for all their kids.
Well, they will for the
So-
grade reconfiguration.
Yeah.
yeah,
It may be just that we're gonna capture that they're saying that they're a parent of an elementary, but there's elementary, middle school, and high school questions, and they can answer all of them.
okay.
Yeah.
With that,
Yeah,
thank you, Kathleen.
High school.
thank you.
So here's our mission statement. This is, we designed this our first year. Recommendations, decisions to date. We approved our mission statement, decided on our decision-making process, wanted to use consensus when possible when we're making recommendations. We spent time on recommending 3 potential names for the new high school, going through all the data. We recommended grades 9, 10, 11 to begin the first year that we opened North Creek High School, and then we also recommended North Creek become a 4A high school. So that was a lot of work, kind of early out of the chute. We also decided early on that there needed to be some type of time in the school day at whatever schedule we adopt for the high school that's focused on student needs. For lack of a better name, we are calling it mascot time at this particular moment, because you can have Viking time and Falcon time, and Cougar time,
Cougar time.
and now
Jaguar.
Jaguar time. So we're referring to it as mascot time. The importance of connecting every student with an adult, we still have to figure out what that time looks like. We also recommended early on that there would be a block schedule, so we are ready to decide on February 8th if it will be a 2-day or a 4-day block schedule recommendation. And we did the same thing as the middle school. We worked with all of our teachers on January 6th on the last district day, and they were able to then take a survey and share with us their preference of which schedule that they prefer and why. And that will go to the task force on February 8th for processing.
And I believe, how many of our high schools right now are on a complete block schedule?
Nobody's on a complete block schedule.
Right, because,
Inglemore and Woodinville have block days built into their schedule. Bothell does not.
okay. And then is, in the recommendation might be for all high schools to go to the same schedule, or?
Correct.
They will all be on the same schedule.
And
Okay.
Good.
couple reasons for that. One is right now our variability of our schedules. Kids who are, either kids who are accessing programs across high schools,
Mhm.
satellite programs, it's problematic for them. It's problematic for the junior high kids who may be going from one schedule at their high school they go to for a early morning class, then back to their junior high. And then being able to share teachers across schools as well is problematic when the schedules don't line.
And is it the plan also to have the, I know junior high is talking about, middle school was talking about going to a block schedule. Would the block schedule at the middle high, the middle schools be the same as high school, or not necessarily?
Well, not necessarily. I'm certain the middle school has recommended a 4-day block schedule, so it's an A-B schedule, so 4 days of block and then 1 early release day. I'm quite certain that the high school task force is going to recommend a 2-day block schedule. That there wasn't
they have
enough
the
support.
more? Okay.
Yeah.
And with
I don't think there was
And
enough
it's the
support for a 4-day block. So what I'll need to work closely with is trying to make sure we match up those block days, if the high school has 2 and the middle school has
And so, see,
4.
how does that really relieve them? I mean, I get it relieves it a little bit, but when you're trying to shift teachers to different schools and stuff, it seems like you still have that problem on those 3 days that aren't the block day. Because you have a full schedule those 3 days, right?
Mhm.
As I understand it.
We do it now, and there's a couple cases every year where we have to try to figure it out and to the best of our ability, have someone cover on a certain day of the week. So it's not foolproof. It was interesting, the junior high principals were talking yesterday about the 4-day block, and we share many more teachers at the junior high level than we do at the high school, and so we were thinking it might be easier at the junior high to have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. So a principal could have a part-time teacher at one school that teaches first and second And then that, we could have they go to another school and teach periods 4, 5, 6. So they would show up on Monday to the first school, and then Tuesday to the second school, and then Wednesday, so they wouldn't be traveling during the day. We just then have to figure out the short early release day. But, so we're just trying to have some conversations around how to make that more efficient,
I love block schedules.
so.
It's like what
Oh.
colleges.
And then seventh period has been a question, and so I'm familiar with the Inglemore schedule, how seventh period works, and it seems like it does right now in the current scheduling. Seventh period, so if you have a block, would it be probably similar to the way
It'd be
it's
the
currently
way it
being
is
done?
now.
Kind of like it- Okay,
We do seventh period 4 days a week,
right,
and so we would continue that 4 days a week.
and it's not on the early release day.
Correct.
Right, and then that way, yeah, it works out.
Yeah, so we will continue that.
Is that then usually elective class or is it instructional class?
Just whatever.
Whatever's
Yeah,
offered.
whatever.
Whatever's offered by whatever's offered by
So
the school.
losing the
and that-
instructional day doesn't affect,
Longer class periods on the 4 other days.
right?
It's the same as the-
They get the same contact time.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
just restructured.
Yeah. So, as Kathleen talked a lot about transitions, so we have a lot of events too that we need to coordinate and standardize across the district. Orientation events for students during the day, I'm talking about busing them up to all the schools, 2 grade levels. Yes, so we're incorporating 2 grade levels into every high
But
school.
we're only doing that one more year, right? Because it's only 9th grade that accesses.
So we're talking about when we transition.
When we
to
move in
get
2017.
8th and 9th
sorry.
go to high school to visit.
Okay.
In the springtime. Some of the schools right now will, the kids will come up to the high school and visit, some don't, so we're just trying to standardize those activities. Orientation events for parents, partnering with the PTSA, link crew coordinators. Just this middle school, we need to expand the number of link crew coordinators that we have available to manage 2 grade levels of students coming in. And then the leadership opportunity piece is making sure that we're connecting with those, all of, the students, the upperclassmen, to provide those leadership opportunities probably with seniors and juniors. And then also, as Kathleen talked about, we need to make sure that the 8th graders have leadership opportunities next year because they won't be the top dogs in the school. And so that's really middle school stuff, but I'm working with the principals on those same types of things. School culture, a lot of conversation around with the task force and with high school principals about what does it mean to be a 9-12 high school, and then how does that look different, and then really a new culture. They're gonna have to think about a new culture. What does that look like? What does it feel like? We've got 4 grade levels of kids now. I think most of the staff changes will be at the high school because we're opening North Creek. So they're thinking about how are they going to create a whole new culture with staff changes and with 2 grade levels of students, and then boundary. There's boundary changes among that. So there's just a few things going on, so.
So, and something I've gotten a question about, it is for staffing at North Creek, is it kind of like the kindergarten teachers where they can, or the 6th grade teachers, I guess, where they can offer to transfer, or is it gonna be a
It's
need by?
binding
So, yeah,
survey.
this spring,
Okay.
so right now the survey is informational, just to kind of give us a sense, a baseline. And then in spring, there'll be a binding survey, so teachers will have to, if they want to go to
Commit.
North Creek, they'll have to commit.
Okay.
And the reason why it's binding, of course, is that so many contingent things and have to cascade off one another, that if people change their minds randomly, that's gonna be problematic.
Yeah, no, that's a.
And that's been
fair.
in coordination with the bargaining unit.
Correct.
Well,
And they're
yes,
comfortable with that
the
process.
NSCA, yes, we created a MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the NSCA leadership that they took through their exec board and the rep council. And then we have sign off from Jeff and Tim.
So that process works both for the administration as well as for the.
We're only talking teachers,
Certificated.
certificated.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So the transfer.
Yes,
But
both
yeah,
sides
it's-
agree.
It's-
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's,
Yes.
that was my
It's not
understanding. I
up
just
for
wanted-
negotiation during this bargaining, is what you're saying.
It's
We did it first.
it's been resolved
Yes,
and
but
yes,
reasonably
yes.
fine.
Check off the-
Yes.
Exactly.
Checked it out, yes.
Smart.
And there's a good interest in that, Jeff says on the survey that's interested. We were joking with him because I think there's, I don't know how many, but he said, gee, there's a lot of people that are interested in North Creek. And I said, yeah, they're all science teachers. I mean, we don't really know what they are yet, but there's a fair number of people interested in going, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
It's
That's inside jokes.
So curriculum adjustments when we go to a four-year high school, so 9-12, right now, where we're at with the curriculum adjustments is world history right now is taught as a 9th grade core requirement at the junior highs. There was a lot of work with a team of teachers with Gretchen Schaefer and our social studies TOSAs about leaving it at 9th grade or moving it to the 10th grade year. And so the recommendation is that we will move world history from the 9th grade year to the 10th grade year. And so the students will have 3 consecutive years of social studies, 10th, 11th, and 12th, which is comparable to many of our surrounding districts. And so that move will occur, beginning in 2017, but what that means is for that first year that we have our 9th graders at the high school, they will have already had world history. So we'll have a year without world history that first year in 17, 18. So that one cohort will not have, we won't have to teach world history that first year. What the high school principals, though, we talked about last week is creating a social studies elective, which many of our surrounding districts have, which will be AP Geography, and it's taught as a 9th grade elective or 10th grade elective, and so we will be encouraging many of our students to think about taking an AP course early in the 9th grade and kind of getting a jump start on some of those skills, and then also we have the graduation requirement of 2 or more AP classes, so all 4 schools will be offering that as an elective in the 9th grade.
If you first.
Refresh my memory, is that our graduation requirement or a state graduation requirement that you have to take 2?
That's ours.
That's ours, okay.
It's
I
ours,
thought so, but,
although the state does encourage, although not mandate, something similar.
yeah, I like it, I mean, I just do.
And-
Science,
Oh, sorry, and then on the social studies, so the middle school, the intent is to start social studies in 6th grade.
Yes.
So then they'll have
6,
what we call social studies 6, 7, 8.
Yes.
Right.
And then
World history.
No.
Oh, sorry.
AP Geography.
AP, so
Nine.
right, so what would the new social studies sequence look like
It'll
for
be,
someone who's coming into the new structure in 6th grade?
6th grade will be ancient civilization.
Mhm.
7th grade will be our current Washington State history, civics.
Okay,
8th grade will be US history. 9th grade will be a free year unless they want to take AP Geography. And then 10th grade will be world history, 11th grade US history, 12th grade contemporary world issues.
So isn't there a 10th grade requirement for Washington State? No,
No.
what am I thinking?
I don't know.
No, I'm thinking there's a duplicate at elementary.
So,
Yeah.
Specifically that 1 year where the 10th graders are coming in have already had world history. I know many of the 4-year universities sort of have an expectation of 4 years of social studies. Do we have a plan of what will offer that 1 year for the 10th graders?
They can take AP Geography.
AP
And we
Geography.
do offer AP Art History.
Okay.
So art history or AP world history, which
Where
is
is
a
it?
different course, so we can maintain that course for that year.
They can take it in the 9th grade,
AP,
AP,
so 10th grade, so
I'm
that,
focusing on that 1 year where they've
Yeah.
already taken world history in the 9th grade and
Right.
so.
so we'll keep those courses intact during that year,
Okay.
so that
There's
students
IB.
can choose those.
Right.
Then we'll probably, then the plan is the following year, then when we do world history as a core for 10th grade, a student can either choose world history or AP world history.
then will we have art history available for 9th graders?
We don't offer that at all of our schools. I think there's just one school that offers that.
What about European
Maybe.
history? I don't know if that's at all the schools.
What is
I
that?
don't know if we offer European.
There
Any of those classes are options and open to students, so I can't imagine that we'd be open to a 9th grade student, because if a student wants to challenge themselves and that's their area of interest, then we're gonna let them sign up for that. There's no prereq, I guess, for that class.
Okay, I'm not gonna get into minutia, I apologize. So the IB kind of has its own version, and I know the 9th grade current is world, pre-IB, pre-world history. So what will they, what are they doing?
Well, certainly Chris and Amy have been in on the discussions around that, and they have a
That's
plan,
all.
and I
Okay.
think it'll all
That's
work
good,
out.
that's all I
So I
need.
can't work
That's all, as long as
That's all.
I'm sure Chris and Amy have got it figured out. Okay, right.
So there is a plan. that let's go with
Excellent,
it.
that's great.
And I know people at this table might know this, but I don't. Is anyone can go to the IB program
Yes,
in the district?
yes.
and there will never be closed to any student that wants to go.
I wouldn't say never, it
Well,
never
out of
has been.
district, never, yeah.
As long as Vicky's there.
Yeah, we've-
I think it's great, I mean,
And often students transfer to begin an IB, but they might not do the full diploma, and that's okay too.
and the pre-IB will start in 9th grade. So we
Would
would
it
start
determine?
essentially, if I'm a kid that's at North Creek, but I want to go to do the IB program, I would essentially start in 9th grade.
If you want to do the IB program, you're probably transferring, you're getting a waiver, and you're not going to be at North Creek.
Yeah, that's what I meant, that's what I meant.
Yes.
I'm coming
In
to
9th
go
grade.
along.
Although ninth grade is kind of a pre-AP/IB.
It'll be different once
Yeah.
9th grade is up there.
Right.
They're gonna, I think we'll see more of an increase of waivers at 9th grade than we have in the past. Some students will stay at their junior high and finish off their 9th grade year.
Right.
I would venture to say we won't see as many, we'll see more that'll waive in their 9th grade year. Science, so with the next generation science standards and all the work that's being done with at the state level, Amanda Rainwater, our science TOSA, with again a team of science teachers has been looking at this for over a year now. And the science recommendation will be to do 9th grade biology, 10th grade chemistry, and 11th grade physics. So we'll be switching what we currently don't do that sequence. So beginning in 2017, when our kids move, our 9th graders will no longer take physics like we do now. They will start in that new sequence.
What's the current
Biology.
sequence?
Current sequence is physics,
Physical
biology,
science.
physical science, biology, and then we don't have a third year of science required yet. This group will need to take a third year of science, so that will become.
Interesting, when it used to be stricter standards way back, because chemistry was always a part of our sequence.
I think a lot of kids still do
A lot of
it, but
students
it's
take
not a
chemistry.
graduation requirement.
College.
And
Now
then-
this will be a graduation requirement, you have to. do
Third
all
year of
three.
science will be required.
And is that the North Shore graduation requirement or from the state?
State,
Okay.
state 24 credit.
And are we gonna let kids jump right into AP if they choose, or will they have to take the gen ed level first and then?
That still is to be worked out, but the conversations are offering AP at those levels.
If they choose.
I think there's a difference of opinion on some of that.
Lots of opinions on that,
So-
actually. Lots of pros and cons.
Amazing.
Lots of pros and cons.
And then the other thing that the principals recommended was largely, and it came from the task force originally, is could we just have a standardized grading scale at all of our schools for end
So
of
what is
term?
that, there's not?
So we, beginning in 2017, will have a standardized grading scale, just the end of term. So in other words,
Wait, what is it now?
well, each school kind of determines
One
their
school, a
own.
93% is an A, and another school, a
94%, no, that's
And
important.
then how class rank is calculated, that'd be nice.
So it'll be the
Uniform
same.
also.
So we'll move that forward, the principals move that recommendation forward, we've got to still take it to labor management and a few other things, but it'll be a standard scale at all 4 high schools, and we felt it was really important with North Creek opening, and that we could just say, here is the grading scale, it's gonna be the same at all high schools, we don't want to unfairly disadvantage any student depending on which school you go to, so here it is.
So is it 94 is an A now?
It's 94 is an A,
And
yes.
90, 93 is an A minus?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that'll be the.
And that's what colleges do too.
That's
So,
all that matters.
Yeah.
so getting the principals to agree on that.
If you're gonna agree on class
Ours
rank
is
too,
94
we're
is
going
an A.
Some schools are standard, some leave it for that. yeah.
So I'll take that back to the
Some
task
don't
force
even
on
do
February
grades.
8th, they'll be happy to
Three.
hear.
Yeah.
But there's no letter grades.
Mascot time,
Yeah.
still to be figured out. Don't know what that'll look like.
But some interaction with an adult.
Yes.
Some-
Yes,
some
all the schools
structure.
have different things right now, and so there's some wisdom in letting the schools kind of figure out what that will look like, because they need to own it, rather than us telling them what to do, so.
And is that like with, you mean with an adult that's like a kind of a,
Coach, mentor, peer,
is it a teacher, is it a,
Yeah, it could
it's
be,
whoever they
Could be a
just,
classified staff.
yeah.
club advisor.
I think that more important, and I don't.
how many kids per like,
Hasn't been decided.
Yeah, that, I don't know what it will look like, and there's so many models from A to Z, again, like with middle school, so really, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of conversation around that. I think that will take some time.
will there be parameters for what it looks like, but still freedom within those parameters?
Yes, we need to discuss those still, we haven't gotten that far yet.
And then on intramurals, or, you know, what I call physical activity, I'm recalling from the middle school task force that that's trying to kind of hardwire that in where many, if not all kids are participating in some kind of an intramural type activity. What's the thought, clarify for me if that's the case, and then what's the thought about physical activity in that intramural competitive kind of sense for all kids in high school?
Let me clarify middle school,
Mhm.
and then, so middle school currently has 4 sports seasons,
Mhm.
and those are competitive sports seasons. So what the plan is that we will continue with 4 seasons, so just bear with me for a minute. So we'll have a season that's in September and October, that's
Mhm.
about 8 weeks.
Right.
And then we're gonna have a week-long program of intramural offerings after school that
Mm.
kids can come and enjoy and sign up for and just have fun. So
Mhm.
one of the questions on the survey is what type of intramural activities would you like to see offered for your student? Then they'll have another 8-week athletic season and then a week of intramurals, then an 8-week athletic season, then a week of intramurals. So there's 4 weeks of intramurals divided during the school year.
Okay, so that's, but if, that's not what I thought I heard in terms of like, you know, like at the military academies, every attendee has to do a sport, whether it's the NCAA sport or
Sandy
it's
doesn't
an
like
intramural
that.
sport.
I just am picturing the parent pushback on that.
No,
We don't, no, that's not.
Okay, but I what I heard at the, you know, a year and a half ago or whatever, so I just wanted to touch base. And so both of those
good
are opt,
memory.
both of those are opt-in,
Yes,
either the 1
yes.
week of intramurals or the,
Yes.
okay,
Are the sports seasons, yeah.
okay.
And then high school, we have not discussed intramurals or anything like that. We will run a WIAA sports season, club sports if those are, you know, depending on what the school offers, but we haven't discussed any intramural offerings. Kids have to take 2 years of, the requirement is 2 years of PE, life fitness for graduation, health life fitness.
Right,
So
but then if you play sport, it's like counts as a half of that, right?
you can waive up to a 0.5 credit for 2 sports seasons.
Right.
That are WAIA, right?
WIAA.
That was,
Right.
And
that's the
Soon to be.
clincher.
club
Right.
sport.
Right.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I guess, well, no, they're talking, I think,
Didn't work that.
yeah,
Well, good, because you know, like someone like, for example, G or other people that are practicing 3 or 4 days a week.
Okay, no, not that level
No.
of club sports.
no,
Our
it's an
club-
ASB club.
Our club sports. Ones
But
we have.
so, sorry, I hope this isn't too in the weeds either. So the current practice that I know at Winterville, because I have done this myself, is going to Northwest Liberty School, getting the PE class, doing another sport that is supervised, and then that takes care of your PE credit. Would that continue?
Anything that comes in on official transcript, we,
From
from an accredited
accredited
institution, we'd
Okay.
be required to take.
So then, going back then,
But I will say just real quickly, sorry, Ken, is that we're offering health and life fitness. We're offering health and PE after school as a 7th period, and so we have many more kids taking that rather than going to
And I
Northwest
think that's a
Liberty.
huge help.
So we're
There
trying
was
to
schedule
expand that.
constraints, I think.
does the district have an online version of that?
Health.
The health, okay.
Health
And,
and
right,
fitness.
and then going back to the intramurals, just so I was clear on that. It was my understanding for middle school that they were gonna encourage broad participation. So like for volleyball or basketball, that are sports that a wide range of abilities can participate.
Yes.
And so it was gonna,
Yes.
we're gonna move most of the activities, sports activities to no cut, so that everyone who wanted to play basketball.
Yes, well,
Was
not
it-
basketball.
No.
Most of them are, yes, basketball, we have constraints on our facilities.
Okay.
So basketball doesn't work.
Because it takes up a lot of square footage for,
Tennis only
But-
works because you can't have 100 kids on the court. So there's certain things that have physical constraints, that
Is it-
have facility constraints.
but it's the intent to increase the
Yes.
intramural participation at
Yes.
middle school.
Intramural or
Sports.
competitive sports?
Or just.
Just participation.
Exposure,
Yeah,
Yes.
as many kids participating as possible, because that's an active part
All
of
of the above.
middle school development, yes.
Connected.
I'm hugely in favor of that.
Yes.
Is it true though that the only option for 6th graders would be non-competitive intramural?
Is that intra-school?
Yeah, they're going to, it's weird because they can't compete with WIA per
Right,
se, but
right.
we're gonna bus them like to have them.
So they can still compete
Right,
across.
so we might have like a cross-country meet at a school and then we'll send all the
Local
6th graders
schools,
there.
yeah.
Does
Well,
that
yeah,
make
because
sense?
they're already competing per
So we'll
se at the
continue that.
Like
elementary.
the track department, okay, right. I just,
Gian loves this.
oh yeah,
Yes,
it's fabulous. Thank you.
So at the 6th grade level, will those kids be able to participate in all the sports?
Yes.
Okay, that's a different for them,
Yes.
that's a positive, yeah,
Okay.
good.
So we've got community members from the Start Time Task Force who are joining, so I want
Downstairs.
to be, no, they're going to come here, but I want to, they've got to set up
They gotta set up.
and they're
Take a break.
kind of need to get organized, and I want to respect their time, so.
Yes.
And thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's very
Thank you.
helpful.
Sure.
Heather, could you
You should get covered.
Can we get a road start, because we got that?
We'll be back till
Before.
Yes.
I think.
I'm wanting more little starts.
What's that?
I want to be sure.